There is a time when wine just warms you up from the inside out, and this week's pack is that time. These are all big and beautiful, bold red wines. And I really wanted to show side by side the idea of comparing the most important thing about wine, which is the difference. And in this week's pack, I'm sending you the most delicious Chianti Colli Senesi, and this Chianti is big, but it's big because it has tannin and it has acid. When you pour it in the glass, you'll see it's pretty light, and we'll discuss that a little bit further. Then there's the Bordeaux region of France, big, and it's like well known, and it's earthy, and it's everything about Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot that you want. That, you know, it has structure, but it's really nice and restrained at the same time. I love Zinfandel. I think Zinfandel is one of the grapes to watch, especially in sweater weather, in the warm by a fireplace, in the cold outside type of times. And Zinfandel is spicy and fruity and really has the big flavor, but it's totally different than the other wines. And then last but not least, Shiraz. Shiraz is big and bold and intense and minty, and it's going to be an amazing comparison to some of the earthier wines in the pack. Have you heard of Zinfandel? Maybe in white Zinfandel. Yeah, I get it. It's not for some people like a grape they think of as fine wine, but for me, it's one of my favorite grapes as well, because Zinfandel has the beauty of having it all. So the cluster of Zinfandel is such that it doesn't ripen evenly. It's something called Milleron d'Age, but regardless, the idea that there's a hen, like a big grape, and a chick, a little small grape. So this kind of uneven ripening produces grapes that can be fig-like and raisins and dates and kind of like that fruit roll-up thing, but also sour. So cranberry and raspberry. So what's really cool about that is you get all of this like ripeness, but you're not like overwhelmed by like dates and figs that taste like a dessert wine. So Zinfandel, one of the grapes that I think is kind of like associated with, you know, American wine and California, but what's most important in Zinfandel is spicy, and that's what I associate with the big, that big, bold, intense, kind of in your face. Not to mention that this wine, it's 16% alcohol, so it's not like, I mean, it's not just like drink the whole bottle, but it really is like a glass of wine with your friends. It goes perfectly with dinner, ribeye steaks, barbecue, mole sauce, and this is big and bold. And this one, the Shadow Jumper, this is from Coonawarra, and Coonawarra is in Australia. And more specifically, it's really known for its cool soil called Terra Rosa. So this is a Cabernet and Shiraz blend, and the Cabernet is going to add the tannin and the structure, and the Shiraz is going to just give you fruit, give you pepper, give you like kind of a minty eucalyptus aroma. But I often think about big and bold in Australia. Like they just kind of go hand in hand. You know, it's a relatively warm climate. There's obviously smaller, cooler climates within Australia, but where Australia makes wine in the global world of wine is that it's warm, so the grapes get really ripe, so you get full flavors, body, alcohol in the resulting wine. So I love this wine because it reminds me of my trip to Australia. Great wine should bring you back to the place where it's made, and or you should feel the people's happiness or the joy or their style in the wine. So like the Chianti, I feel like the subtlety, and the Australia, I feel like the bold and like the kind of welcoming feel I felt in Australia. But it smells like mint, like literally, like peppermint patties and eucalyptus, and it's really, I love that smell. Blackberries, cassis, cedar, smoke, kind of like a forest, like campfire. It's really just a great wine to smell. So much so that you're almost like, oh, I didn't even take a sip yet, which is kind of cool. Like you'll be drinking the bottle for an hour before you realize you didn't take a sip. I do that a lot. On the palate, this is just like coating your mouth. Has a little bit of a dusty, kind of chewy talcum powder kind of feel on the palate, meaning like it's tannic. It's big and it's tannic, so it has the ability to give you a lot of power and a lot of fruit, but at the same time dry out your mouth and give you structure. You might consider at some point trying the Merlot from Bordeaux with the Cabernet blend from Australia. Just really cool comparison about the way tannins feel in your mouth. Or you can try the Chianti and the Zinfandel and see the way acid makes your mouth salivate. It's a really cool way to explore wine, but just drink it and have fun at the same time. Let's try Bordeaux Superior. So this wine is 100% Merlot, and it's from the Bordeaux region of France. So Merlot has got a bad rap sometimes because maybe of a movie that will remain nameless. But Merlot is actually one of my favorite grapes. I think Merlot is big. People love Merlot because it gives you like that warm hug, and it's juicy and round. I mean, the shape itself, I think, if I'm thinking about Merlot, I think about round and plush and generous. And when it's from Bordeaux especially, it's more subtle in its fruit. So you really get all the complexity that Merlot has to offer. I find Merlot smells like cocoa or chocolate. So to me, nothing is better than a fireplace and a glass of red wine and just a piece of dark chocolate. So in this Merlot blend, you'll find almost like it smells like Swiss Miss hot cocoa, just in that like deep, dark Valrhona sort of way. And it feels plush. It smells like plums that are perfectly ripe, not overripe or sour. And then the tannins kick in that they're like sort of chewy, but they don't dry out your mouth. So you get a big full-bodied wine without that like real tannic edge that Cabernet can add. Again, when you taste it, you might want for more fruit. If you're thinking of big, bold wines as always fruity and spicy, then certainly that's not it. But if you're thinking of big, bold wines of like the way they feel on your palate, the way they linger, this is the wine for you, for sure. Vittoria San Donato is the producer that's located in Chianti, and more specifically in the fine wine part of Chianti called Chianti Colli Senesi, which is right near Siena. So this 2015 wine from Chianti is a blend of Sangiovese, the most important grape in Tuscany, the grape of Brunello di Montalcino, of Vino Nobile di Montepulciano, lots of words. And also it has a little small percentage of Cielo. But what's more important about this wine is I wanted to show the idea of there's different ways to get bold flavor in wine. If you've ever walked into a wine bar and you've said, I just want a big red wine, there are many different styles and many ways that you can get that. So do you mean big fruit? Do you mean big oak? Do you mean big alcohol? Do you mean big spice? Well, you might mean all of these depending on the time. So in this week's pack, let's compare big and bold flavors. So we're getting big and bold here all because of structure. So I'll tell you what I mean by that. You look at the color and it's kind of like this more ruby, medium, transparent. You can sort of read through it. So you're like, that's not that big and bold, Laura. When you smell it, it's also very subtle, as old world wines tend to be. And the subtlety is like, maybe it's not jumping out of the glass, so you don't think you're getting big and bold. But really, it's all about the way the mouth feels. And that's how you get the feeling of like, yes, I'm getting what I want. So red fruit, red cherries, cranberries, but really it's like savory. I always find Chianti, when it's really good, smells like tomato sauce. So there's like a tomato water and a basil and oregano, sun-dried tomatoes, but it's really earthy, as old world wines tend to be. So mushrooms and cedar. On the palate, it's more of the same. That sort of sour red fruit, that tomato water, that savory aroma. But here's where you take a sip and you're like, the acid makes my mouth salivate. So I'm starting to produce moisture, and the tannin on the wine dry my mouth out. So I'm actually simultaneously feeling like my mouth is parched. So the real thing about this wine is you keep wanting to take a sip so you can see the juxtaposition between your mouth salivating and dry and it's big and delicious. I hope you enjoyed this week's pack. I was really excited to talk about the big, the bold, and more importantly, Old World versus New World. Just to recap, Old World regions were at some point places that had a king or a queen. You're thinking about all of the great wine producing regions of Europe, and then the New World regions, places like the United States, South America, Australia, New Zealand. Those are all places where the newer style of wine is produced. Like, we didn't have as much technology in the Old World 4,000 years ago as we do now. And the Old World wines tend to be more earthy, the New World wines tend to be more fruity. So have fun exploring this pack. We want to know all your thoughts, as always, on social media. Tag us in your photos and let us know what you're up to. And I hope you enjoy these wines.